Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for making time to join us this morning. I just have a list of updates and clarifications and reminders, and then I will open the floor for question and answer or just anything else that you guys would like to discuss this morning. Um, First thing I want to do is introduce our team. For those of you who don't know, this is the AOA team, and we've got the map of the state, so you can see your region there. Josh Laney is our director. I'm the assistant director, and have worked with, I believe, almost all of you on your nursing apprenticeships over the last couple of years. Katanga Mance is our operations manager. She's in the office there in Montgomery, and she handles our tax credits and things like that. Amy Brown is our incentives and accountability manager, and that's one thing I want to come back to. We want to make sure that any of your employers who qualify for our incentive funding that they are in touch with Amy, so we can get that money to them. And then over on the right, you see our regional project managers. We've got Mike Berdier up in Region 1. Tawana serves Regions 2 and 4. Sophia has Regions 5 and 6. And Region 3 and 7, that position is open right now. So Mike, Tawana, Sophia, and I are covering 3 and 7 together. That position is open right now. The job just got posted on Friday. So if you know someone who would be an amazing addition to our team, we would love for you to suggest to them that they apply for that job. We had opened it up a few months ago, and then we were not able to go through the hiring process. I'll tell you about that in a second. We had over 120 applications, so we're really hoping to see that again this summer. I believe it's open for about 2.5 more weeks. So, and the reason that we were not able to hire, some of you might have seen this, the legislature has created a new department at the state level. That's going to be the Department of Workforce, and they are pulling some of the offices from Commerce and some from Labor and putting them together in the Department of Workforce. So our office will be moving to Workforce, and really all that means changes for us is that we'll be using a different fiscal agent, and we'll have different emails that we will, get to you when those come. But our work will continue, and just the way everything has been running, it's going to continue that way. So just wanted to let you guys know that. Okay, so here's another thing that one of the schools and I ran into with an employer. So I wanted to go over this with you guys. We found out that the employer was giving the wage increases just based on the related instruction, the classes. And so I brought this up. This is I believe this is Northeast Alabama's App A. Um, this is how we showed it to the employer for them to understand. We color coded it. I love for something to be color coded, and this really seemed to help. So when you are, having those check-ins with your employers, if you run into someone who is still having a little confusion about how the wage progression works, we found this to be helpful. So we color coded everything that has to do with nursing school is yellow. And we let them know, that's their classes, that's their paid clinicals, that's everything that is RTI. If it's a nursing school requirement, that's related technical instruction. And then that list of on the job learning competencies, that's OJL. And you've got to do both of those to get your wage increase. And even this employer thought, oh, well, the school checks all that off in nursing 112. They were just confused. No, they're checking it off from the school side to give you permission to now do the OJL during paid work hours. So if y'all will just review that as needed with your employers, please make sure they understand. And then we showed them that, the licensure is a different thing. So, those are your 3 requirements to complete the apprenticeship. You're marked off as proficient, or that NA if it doesn't apply in the unit where they're working for all their OJL. And then also they've completed all of their related instruction with you, which includes graduating, and then they've passed that NCLEX. So make sure they understand all of those on the wage progression, please. Right. Okay, another question that we've gotten is like LPNs. If you have a mobility program, or let's say they were already working as an LPN, how does this work? And so I'll start with the wages. Um, Remind your employers that the apprentices can make different wages based on years of experience or shift differentials, things like that. But they don't have to do that. We have some employers who want all their apprentices to make the same amount of money just to keep it easier in payroll. But then we've had others who've said it's just a matter of keying it in the keyboard. We don't mind having different wages. So just make sure that they understand that that is up to them. And then as far as your apprentices are concerned, you want to make sure that they understand. So we had one mobility student. She had been working as an LPN for many, many, many years, and she was making $28 an hour. It would not make sense, and that employer wants all the apprentices to make that same amount. It would not make sense for her to come down to that $17 an hour for 2 semesters, because she had full Pell Grant as well, or full scholarship or something. So if you do the math, it didn't make sense for her. But we had another young man, he was making $25 an hour, but he didn't have anything paying for his school. And so when you add in the 24 hours of paid clinicals that he's getting plus his tuition, even making that $7 an hour drop, or $8 an hour, whatever it was, he was coming out $3,000 to $5,000 to the good over the course of the year. So when you run into that, and the project managers and I are happy to help you with this, if you ever, need help with a situation like that, we want to just take it on a case by case basis and kind of give them some guidance to figure out, does this make sense for me? If I'm going to take a pay cut or not. While we're talking about that, we also had an apprentice who said, I was an LPN, or maybe he was some kind of tech. I can't remember, but he felt like what I think he is an LPN, but he felt like what he was being allowed to do as a nurse apprentice was less than what he was able to do as an LPN. I think this had something to do with medication, and y'all will all understand this better. Maybe as an LPN, he was allowed to do 2 kinds of medicines, and as a nurse apprentice, something else. So we checked with the Board of Nursing on this, and they said that it is in the rule that they can work up to their license, but then that is up to the employer. The employer does not have to allow them. Whatever they decide, all nurse apprentices, and they felt like that was kind of a safety thing. Like, it's easier for an employer to say, especially if we're talking about medication, all the apprentices are going to do this when they're here as apprentices. So that young man was right. I've read it in the rule, and I think I should be allowed to do this. It is allowable, but not required of the employer. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Just a reminder about, and I mentioned this with the wage progression. For you to complete your apprentices in Rapids, they need to have met all your requirements of your nursing program. They need to be marked off on all of the OJL by the employer, and they need to have passed the NCLEX. When they get to that point, that's when you go into Rapids and complete them. All right. Another thing. So some of the schools have reached out to us if they've come across a commitment that an apprentice has signed on to that they believe is in violation of our policy. If that happens, you can send it to us. We'll get Josh to review it, and he's happy to meet with the employer. He understands that your relationship with your employers is critically important to the success, not just of your apprenticeship program, but of your nursing program. And he doesn't want you guys, damaging your relationship. So he's happy to navigate those difficult conversations. And I'll tell y'all, almost every employer that we've met with, their reaction has been, "Oh, we didn't realize. What do we need to change to make this work?" It's not usually a negative conversation. So please just remember, um, as the sponsor, you are the advocate for your apprentices, and you're making sure that they're not being asked to do something that's in violation of our policies. So, if you are aware that there is a contract out there, please try to get your hands on it and review that just to make sure, if it says that it is a loan, or that they're going to be charged interest, or that they're going to be asked to pay back. We had one that said they were going to have to pay back their wages, which I think that might be illegal to ask someone to pay you back for work that you've paid them to do. But anyway, if you think it's in violation of our policies at all, please send it our way, and we're happy to review it and game plan with you, and then meet with that employer. Another thing that was brought to our attention, we still have a few apprentices who are just kind of working whenever they want to. And for your newer, for those of you who have employers who've been doing this with you for a while, I think they know that's not acceptable. But some of your newer employers, for some reason, they think the apprentice is in the driver's seat, and they don't realize that they can say, no, here are your hours that you're working this week. Of course, we want them working with y'all, and we don't want them working a night shift before a test and all that stuff, but there's a fine line. We had one who said, I think she's only worked a few shifts. She says she doesn't have to. So and then that reminds me, please make sure that you have some kind of system where you guys are communicating too, with those employers. I was on a call with one of our schools and an employer, and they were saying that, that one of the apprentices really hadn't been doing that well. And she said, well, I really wish that y'all had made me aware of this sooner, because I'm sure all of you would feel that way. I want you to bring things like that to my attention. So just make sure you've got that communication in place so that if your employers are kind of missing the boat on some of the details, or if they're needing to communicate something with you about the apprentices, especially regarding scheduling. We get a lot of questions about that 24 hours a week, and I try to remind employers, again, y'all, I feel like a broken record. You guys know this, but I tell them, and I know y'all are telling them, that that's a combination of their paid clinicals and their work hours. Some weeks it's going to be heavy on one more than the other. Some weeks it might be about half and half, but just making sure that they understand, that it's not just the paid clinical hours. That's back to that wage progression. That's the yellow stuff. Paid clinicals goes in the RTI bucket, but your work hours, that goes in the blue bucket, and they've got to have a balance of those to truly meet the requirements of the apprenticeship. Okay, and then I had on my list, make sure you're having either individual meetings with your employers or group meetings to give them those reminders and updates, and make sure that they are on the same page with you. Lauren from Troy, are you here on the call? I put on my list, you said something that I thought was so helpful when Sophia and I did a check-in with you recently. Are you here? Okay, I'm sure I can't say it as well as she did. But she told us something about, and Sophia, you might could help me. They noticed a gap. I'm trying to remember, in their apprentices. I think and y'all speak this language so much better than we do, but maybe it had something to do about the documentation that that nursing students do, that your nurses out in the field don't really do. And they were kind of skipping over that. They were kind of going from theory to application without that middle piece. I think, like the notes that y'all have them take and the documentation. So anyway, they just noticed that was a piece that was missing, and I'll just ask them to talk about that on the next meeting. But that was a piece they saw that was missing, and they just made sure that their instructors are filling in that gap for their apprentices. But I know I just butchered that. But I always appreciate when y'all tell us, hey, here's a piece that we saw where we needed to kind of make an adjustment. And I think that's always helpful for the rest of y'all to hear. So I'll table that for the next meeting too. Okay, so completion dates for your RN apprentices, that's basically about an 18-month program because they're in your program, and some of you it's longer, like Auburn and Troy. I know it's actually longer. Um, but I just wanted to let you know that the project managers and I are going to update that in Rapids. So if yours is a program that takes about 18 months for the 4 semesters they're in school with you till they take the NCLEX, we're going to change that to 3,000 hours in our system so you won't have to update their completion date. Um, and then Auburn and Troy will update yours too. Anyway, we'll get all of those to reflect how long it really is. And please don't worry about the completion date. The only thing about that is it's if we do 2,000 hours in the system, it's automatically saying they should complete in 12 months. And then we get reminders like that they're overdue. So we're trying to put it as close to the completion, but it's not a big deal if your apprentices haven't past their NCLEX by that date, it's okay. I'm just letting you know we're cleaning things up on our end of the system if you see that change being made in Rapids. Right? Okay, next. We ran into this with an employer. For those of you who know about WIOA funding, that's WIOA, WIOA. It is federal grant funding that comes currently through the Department of Commerce. I think that will probably get moved to Department of Workforce as well. Don't know that. Um, so that is your local career centers. If any of you are already, I know many of you are working with your local career centers, they have wage reimbursement that they can offer to employers for new employees who have some sort of barrier to employment. They also have money that they can use to scholarship those employees while they're in a training program. And so in order for your employers to be able to access that funding, you have to be on your apprenticeship has to be on something called the ETPL. That's the Eligible Training Provider List, ETPL. Many of your programs are already on there. We were checking through the list yesterday. And so some of you, your nursing program is on the ETPL, but it's got to be on there doubly. Your nursing program has to be on there, or doesn't have to be on there, but if you want employers to be able to access that grant funding to help pay, your nursing program has to be on there, and then your nursing apprenticeship has to also be on there. So for those of you who have LPN and RN, you want both of those on your programs on the ETPL, and then you want them on the ETPL as an apprenticeship program as well. Most of you have someone at your college or university who handles the ETPL. You've probably, maybe, possibly never even heard of the ETPL and didn't even know that was a thing. But many of your technical training programs are already on there. So we just encourage you to please reach out and try to find out who that is at your college or university and make sure that they have put your nursing apprenticeship programs on the ETPL. If you are not sure and you need help with that, please reach out to Mike, Tawana, Sophia, or me. We are happy to try to help you figure out who that is and get you headed in the right direction for that. Okay, another thing I wanted to show you guys, and I will send you the link to this. I'll send out the recording of today's meeting, and I will include the link to the drive. I really appreciate all the things that have already been added in here. This is really just, we've created this drive for people to put resources, the things that they are using that are helpful with their nursing apprenticeship here for, all of you guys to download and use as needed. I'm not tech savvy, so I'm reminding y'all of this. When I send you the link, you are going to have the ability to edit because I want you to be able to download, but just be careful. Don't go in and change things that are in here. Download it first and then make your changes. But this, I think, is a very helpful resource for everybody here on the call. And I encourage you, if you have a document or a form or a checklist that is working for you guys and has been helpful for your program, please drop it here in the drive and share that with the group here. All right. 2 dates I want to share with you. We try to do our group employer meetings for the nursing apprenticeship employers twice a year. I'm going to do the next one on July the 18th at 9 a.m. Um, I found if I send employers that information way out, they tend to forget. So my goal is to send y'all that information the last week of June, give them 2 or 3 weeks, and ask you to please send that out to your participating employers. And we'll just give them some of these same updates that we had today, and anything else. If you have something that you would like us to include in that, like, hey, it would be really helpful if y'all review this with the employers, please bring that to our attention, and we would be happy to add that to our agenda for that meeting. And then I've got on here my next group meeting for our team here. The nursing sponsor group meeting will be September the 24th. I'll do that one at 9 a.m. too, and I'll send y'all the invite for that. Again, I'll just use the invite list from today's meeting. If there's anybody else that you would like me to include on my emails or on my, my calendar invites, please just let me know. I'm happy to include anybody else from your team that you would like to have on here. Um, I did have, while I was going through the list, Brittany from Coastal, I saw you log in. If you're still here, um, I was thinking, as part of your apprentice onboarding, I think you give your apprentices our policies about the last dollar scholarship and commitments and all of that. Is that right? Is that part of your onboarding process, or do you have any suggestions about that piece?
As far as just explaining to the students, I'm sorry, ask me that question again. I understand it's about the last dollar scholar, but your policy. I mean, I do share the clause that states, that the facilities are responsible for, they serve as the last dollar scholar, so that any scholarships, WIOA, GI funding, financial aid, that those funds are applied first, and then the facility picks up the remaining costs. So I do put that clause into it's in our handbook actually, and so we do. I do make that very clear to them during the onboarding session. But I'm not sure, like, as far as your policy, like a document. I don't think I have like an actual.
What guidance do you give them about if their employer gives them a contract with a commitment?
Okay, so that information was provided by Josh. It was part of your memo. So yes, I do include that in the onboarding session. That is correct. And basically, I just explained to them that what is acceptable and what is not acceptable as far as work commitments and financial obligations after graduation. So if a student decides not to continue as a employee, that what is acceptable for an employer to have them pay back versus not. So yeah, that information did come from the memo that Josh sent out maybe 6 months ago, maybe even a little longer. But yeah, that come directly from you guys.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Sorry to put you on the spot, Brittany.
That's no problem.
Um, Another thing, well, a question that we got from one of the schools is, with their first group of apprentices, they had more not stay on with the employers than what they would have liked. And what we had gotten from another school was just the importance of driving home when you are doing that interested student meeting with your students way in the beginning, and you're telling them about this opportunity. We love this wording. If that facility is not a place where you would apply to work after graduation, do not apply for an apprenticeship with them. Just driving home, this is permanent employment with that employer. This is not just an opportunity to get paid clinicals or do this while you're in nursing school. They're making an investment in you. So if this is not a place you would want to work after graduation, then the apprenticeship with that employer is not right for you either. And that's okay for y'all to say that, because we really, we want the employers to get that return on their investment. So making sure that, and let me ask, Honor from the Board of Nursing, are you on here? If not, I'll tell y'all about something that we've been working on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, great to have you. Will you talk a little bit about that transition from the nurse apprentice permit to the temp license? And I know you said on our last call that it's critically important for the apprentices to make sure that they are submitting that completed application to the Board of Nursing. And then, oh yeah, I see that you texted me. Sorry, I missed that. Okay.
That's okay. So we identified this gap that was going on where we would not, let me start over. A couple of months ago, we changed the rules so that anybody who files a completed application and pays the fee and is not otherwise disqualified automatically gets a temporary permit. The problem is that we're finding is the completed application also depends on a transcript arriving for the student. Isn't that what we're talking about, Meredith?
Yes, thank you.
And so what we need is, and we can't issue a temporary permit until we have everything, including that transcript. So we really need some coordination between the schools and their students to make sure that there's not a lag there, because if they are, at the moment that they graduate, they can no longer be apprentices. But if they quickly file a completed application, there would be really no gap. And then they could just continue to, but they would be working as a graduate RN pending taking the test. Does that make sense? Did I cover what you wanted?
Yes. And I was thinking, will the nurse apprentice permit become invalid once they receive the transcript or upon graduation?
We're working on that, but it's probably, we can deem it a not official until we get the transcript. Isn't that what we did with one for you, Meredith?
I think so, yes.
Yes. And but in order for them to transition into becoming RNs, we need those transcripts as early as possible. And we were having a situation where it might take 2 or 3 weeks to get the transcript, but the student has already advised us that she graduated by virtue of filing the application. So I think what we're going to do until we get until we get the transcript thing sorted out for sure, is to deem them not to have officially graduated until we receive the transcript.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Is that acceptable?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that was exactly what we wanted. We were hearing from the employers and the schools about that gap and having to change their, job title. And so, yeah, the more seamless we can make that transition, absolutely the better.
And
So
the reason that we had to go to the temporary permit being automatic was too many students were, say, accepting a job with a Monday start date when they don't take the test until the Friday, and then the shift was left uncovered. So everybody who has a completed application will get a transcript, provided that they're not disqualified by a disciplinary answer or something like that.
I see we've got a question. Will the verbiage in the administrative code be changed, Honor?
Which verbiage?
Cindy?
The verbiage that states that their apprenticeship permit it becomes inactive at the time of graduation. If you're going to accept yeah.
Yeah,
ahead.
we'll need to address that. But I don't, we're buried right now. We've just taken over management of the Massage Therapy Board effective Saturday. So,
Okay.
but for
I-
now, that will be the way that it's treated.
Okay, so I have employers that, the administrative code is their Bible that they go by.
Uh-huh.
So when my apprentices graduate, permit is inactivated, and then we do have a little bit of a lapse time before the transcripts are approved and sent to the Board of Nursing. So these apprentices are having to be demoted to a tech position.
Right.
So if there's any way we can prevent that, if the verbiage can be changed so that the employers will we can allow the permit to go a little bit longer, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll see about addressing that in a minute. I also write the rules, so we'll see about
Okay.
addressing that in July.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Honor.
Hey,
And Brittany,
Cindy. Oh, sorry.
yeah, was that you, Brittany? Yeah, I
Yes,
see
it
your
was.
hand is up. Okay.
I was just going to also share, this was something that when Honor and Meredith and I met, the administrative code that talks about nursing graduates, instead of demoting them, the nurse apprentice back to a, CNA or that level of scope of practice, there is that administrative code that supports a nursing student who's graduated a program but is not licensed yet. I was not familiar with that administrative code, but that is on the Alabama Board of Nursing's website. So I wanted to share that is a resource that you guys can take a look at, and that is an option for the employer to pursue while we wait on that temp license. And I know I experienced with the inactive license or inactive permit, it was when the student submitted an application for their license. It was that date on that application that ABM was going by, as far as an active date. A graduation date, that's when they received that application, then that's when they took that date and made their license or their permit inactive. And so between the time that they received the application and then received the transcript, that's where the gap of time came from as far as waiting on receiving their temp license. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we don't want to necessarily at Coastal, we didn't necessarily want to tell the students like, hey, wait to apply. But if they're receiving their application for NCLEX, and as soon as they receive it and they get that date of graduation, that's when they're making their permit inactive. So maybe wait a week or two to give the time for the transcripts to get to be processed by the college. That was something that we had kind of chatted about as far as a resolution to save some.
Yeah,
Some time on not having
that
to
would
print
do it, but I was, I think we're going to look at counting the data. I mean, my understanding is going forward, we're going to count the date of the transcript.
Okay.
Peggy is on vacation this week, but I'll have to talk to her about that next week. But my intention is that that's what we would do. And we would need to clarify that in the administrative code, so that everybody will be clear. But it is true that a graduate can work in that student / graduate aid role. Now, it doesn't have to revert to a tech, because during COVID, we altered that rule to allow graduates, because of even if you have failed the test, you can continue to work in a student aid role.
And that nursing grad administrative code, when you take a look at it, it lists many skills, and those skills are much more than a nursing assistant. So that scope of practice is a little more broad. I think the biggest thing with the employer was creating a job code for a nursing grad. that was, something they were looking at. I know on my end, they were like, okay, well, we have to switch their job code status over from a student nurse apprentice to a nursing grad, and then to a nursing, I guess a temp license, however they do it in their system. But that was something that they were going to kind of have to figure out what would work best for them on their job code status HR side.
Thank y'all for that information. That helps me a lot.
Hey, Meredith, there's also a question earlier in the chat about the memo being shared in the drive. I think they're talking about the memo about the last dollar scholarship or the clause that Coastal uses.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Betty. Those memos are in your sponsor binder. For those of you who have a sponsor binder, if you don't, let us know. We'll be happy to come visit you and drop one off. And I will also put, the PDF into the drive so that you'll have that. So we have the last dollar scholarship policy that Josh issued in November of 2020, that basically says our apprentices can't incur debt and that they're responsible for offsetting the costs with their Pell Grant, GI Bill, all of that. And then the employer picks up the rest. And then he issued clarifications last summer that go with that policy. It wasn't a new policy, but it's just clarifications that kind of spell out, recommendations for if you are going to ask for a commitment. And so I will be happy to put both of those documents in that drive. Thank you for asking about that. Any other questions or things that you guys would like to share? Just opening the floor up. Awesome. Well, I love to keep a meeting short and sweet, so I really do appreciate all of you taking the time for this morning. I will send out the link to the drive as well as the link to this recording, and the AOA team and I are here to assist you however we can. Well, I think we're up to over 600 nursing apprentices in Alabama right now, and we have around 4,000 apprentices. So that's a pretty big chunk of our apprentices are coming from your program. So just thank you all so much for all that you're doing, and please rely on us. We're here to help you and assist any way that we possibly can. All right. Thank you all. Hope you have a great day.